Welcome everybody to another edition of Bhakti Speaks. Thank you all for joining us. We're so excited and happy to be here again. These have been phenomenal 1-hour interviews that we've been doing kind of weekly, and we've been enjoying ourselves with our beautiful artists and luminaries. And today we have one of our special old friends, Govindas, from Bhakti Yogashala, and we're going to have a nice conversation and get into it. Welcome, Govindas. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much, Sri, for inviting me. Hey, everybody out there. Namaste. Hope you all are doing great.
So a little bit background. Most of our listeners, of course, will know who you are with Govindas and Radha and from Bhakti Yogashala. Give us a little background, how you got into the spiritual work and how you started your studio, and what motivated you to even get into kirtan and chanting and yoga?
Let's see. If I look way back to when I was a kid, I remember being in synagogue. And the last thing in the world I wanted to do was be in synagogue during the high holy days and these types of things. I grew up Jewish. And it was only when the cantor would sing these holy songs that something would happen. I would wake up to feeling actually something. The rest of the time, I was just sleeping, like as I looked around, everybody else was sleeping too. But when I would hear these holy songs, my heart would light up, and I actually remembered at times tears coming down my face and actually feeling the presence of God, feeling the presence of spirit. I look back to when I was a child, and those were the first memories that I actually have of a connection to something bigger, and it was actually through the music and through sacred music. I didn't grow up in a very religious household, very materialistically a very materialistic paradigm. And as I grew older into college, started experimenting with psychedelics, mostly mushrooms. And that's where I, as I'm sure many of us, felt this connection to the one. I felt this sense of oneness, that everything in the universe is intimately woven together, and our life is a thread in that fabric of oneness. So through those psychedelic experiences as well, I started to feel a connection to something bigger than who I knew myself to be as an ego and a bundle of desires and wants. Well, I went to university. I grew up on the East Coast. I went to University of Maryland. I got a business degree. I came out of college and I moved to California. And I didn't know anybody. And I just jumped into a whole new life.
How old were you then?
I was 22 then. Finished college, moved straight out to California. Started in San Diego first. And I fell into what I would call at this point a depression, actually. That, I didn't know anybody. I knew I didn't want to, follow the business path of 9 to 5, suit and tie, that type of thing. So I was really lost. I was really lost and really confused without any guidance. And down the street from my house, where I lived in San Diego, there was a bookstore, a spiritual bookstore. And I started to find some spiritual books that I was just searching for something, right? And so I found some books. I remember like one of the books, maybe you've heard of it, John Kabat-Zinn, Wherever You Go, There You Are, The Way of the Peaceful Warrior, yes. Other books on mindfulness and Buddhism. And that started to give me a language for some of these psychedelic experiences that I had previously. Well, I moved from San Diego to Los Angeles a couple years later to follow a girl, actually. And didn't work out between me and the girl, but here I am living in Los Angeles in this massive city of 14 million people. And I was, well, first of all, again, I felt depressed, but on a physical level, I was diagnosed, I started having digestive problems, digestive troubles. And I was diagnosed with colitis, ulcerative colitis. So, you know, my body, I was always an athlete as a kid. I was very strong. And here my body was just falling apart. So I went to the doctor. The doctor said, you know, here's medicine. You're going to need this for the rest of your life. And I was just like, no, this is not going to happen. And, you know, the synchronicity of all of this, within a couple days, a friend said, you know what, you need to go to a yoga class. I said, that sounds interesting, because I had been reading all of these spiritual books, but I hadn't been introduced to the physical path of yoga. And I went to a yoga class, and I walked out of the yoga class just feeling like, this is it. This is what's going to help me heal. And it just took really that one yoga class that I found my path, and I found what I was looking for, just from the language of the teacher, the breathing, the movement, the focus, and that feeling when you come out of that first yoga class, you feel so high, you feel so open, you feel so amazing.
What year was that, by the way?
This was 1995. So, you know, one thing led to another. I started studying Ayurveda and seeing an Ayurvedic doctor. I was able to eventually get myself off all of the Western medicines. I started studying with other yoga teachers. I was led to Brian Kest, who I really vibed with. I took a teacher training of his. This was 1998, I believe. Took my first teacher training. Around that time, a friend of mine, I was actually in Florida visiting my parents, and about to drive up to a friend living in New York City at the time. And a friend said, in Florida, said, here, take this tape. I think you're going to really like this. And this was my first Ram Dass tape that was given to me. So I put the tape in my car, and the 20+ hour drive up to New York, I must have listened to it 10 times, over and over and over again. And he was speaking about Bhakti Yoga, the path of love. He was speaking about Guru, speaking about Neem Karoli Baba. He was speaking about Dharma and all of these things. And it was like everything he said, I felt like my soul understood. And it was really from that point that I started following Ram Dass and getting as many audio tapes as I could of his, and reading books, of course. And then as I was teaching yoga, I was introduced to kirtan, and this is when Krishna Das just came out with his first CD sometime around that 1998. I believe that was called Pilgrim of the Heart, if I'm not mistaken. And I had like, what Ram Dass's words were saying, Krishna Das's music was doing the same thing to me. And it was like, I found my path. This is the way I want to spend this incarnation, following this path. And it was a few years after that, I remember I was in Maui, that I had a dream, and Neem Karoli Baba came and visited me in the dream, and I was sitting at his feet, and I was crying my eyes out like I had found home, and he was slapping me on the head, giggling and laughing and giggling and laughing. And I came out of that dream feeling like this was the most real experience I'd ever felt in my life, more real than anything in this third dimension. And so I knew some Neem Karoli Baba devotees, and they said, yeah, you know what, just put a picture of him up where you meditate. This would be a good idea for you. And that's what I started doing. I got my first harmonium, and yeah, so, and then I was teaching all over LA, and I was feeling, and this was through the 2000s, I think it was 2005, 2006, I made my first kirtan CD. And then, interesting enough, I was feeling this impulse that I wanted to create a yoga studio that was more kirtan focused, where we had kirtan every night of the week or close to that, because there was a big kirtan community in LA, and there wasn't a lot of kirtan aside when Krishna Das or Bhagavan Das or Jai Uttal would come in. And we were meeting at a friend's house once every couple of weeks, and a bunch of us just gathering and doing some kirtan, but there was a yearning for more. And my wife was taking a dance class at this little dance studio in Santa Monica.
So I want to stop. In between this whole thing, you got married.
In between this whole thing, we got married, exactly.
Okay.
Got married in the early 2000s.
Okay.
2003, actually. So, yeah, so my wife was taking a dance class at this studio, and I would come and pick her up from class and kind of look in there and be like, boy, this would be a cool little yoga studio. It was a very small place, but I felt like a nice, humble way to start. And let alone maybe 3 weeks after that, there was a for lease sign in the window. So I said, okay, this has to be a sign. So I called the landlord. The landlord said, yep, it's for lease. We negotiated, took like a year plus to negotiate. And that's where Bhakti Yogashala was born, 2010, right about a year after the first Bhaktifest. 2nd Street in Santa Monica, exactly.
Fantastic.
So, and then from, the Bhakti Yogashala ran at that same location for 11 years. And then because of the pandemic, we had to shut down. And now, we're doing things online. We have this wonderful space up in Topanga Canyon that we do weekly events. And here we are.
So segueing into some of the stuff that you brought up, for you and for your listeners, how important do you think it is to have a spiritual teacher or even a spiritual guru on your path?
Well, Shyam Das, who is a dear brother, and many of us know Shyam Das from Bhakti Yogashala. From Bhaktifest, I'm so sorry. And he always said, this path of bhakti, it's about being a follower. You have to follow those great ones, those great beings, those great teachers, those great gurus who know, who have some knowing. And from them, they transmit it to us. So the old teaching in yoga is, instead of digging many wells, to just dig one deep well. So to have a spiritual teacher that we can follow, whether that's, some great enlightened being, some siddha, whether that's an Amma or a Neem Karoli Baba or a, Nityananda or a Prabhupada, or whoever it is that you feel attracted to their teachings, to me is of the utmost importance, because they show us what the path is all about. They show us the way. Now, I always remember Ram Dass saying, it's not everybody's karma to have a guru, in form especially, or to even just have one guru. You can just accept teachings from all over, whether it's from books that you're reading or yoga teachers that you see, or you know, great masters that you go sit with. So, because the guru lies in all of that, right? And all of that, and all of their wisdom. For me, I guess I could say my karma is to just follow this being Neem Karoli Baba, who I never met in person, but have met in dreams many times. And through the elder devotees, they've transmitted so much of his wisdom to us younger devotees as well too. So for anybody that doesn't have a relationship with a guru, I think that's okay, but we have to have relationship with the Dharma, with the teachings, with the great wisdom, thousands and thousands of year-old wisdom that has come from these great masters. And we have to be very careful because we live in the West, and you know, what do we do in America? We love to make everything ours, right? We love to dilute everything and make it ours, and you know, think that we've created this, but we haven't, right? This is not ours. This is this great ancient tradition that's been around for who knows how long. So we sit as really as humble students on the path, you know. Yes, I teach yoga, I lead kirtan, but I never think of myself as a teacher, really. I just really identify with that role of or sense of just being a follower of the great teachers. And that's what being a das is all about.
Right. It's like sharing the wisdom that you've accumulated over the years, and imparting that without any specific agenda behind it. It's very, very important, because so many people, when they first start coming into yoga, you know, they want to go deeper, and then they get very confused because this teacher says that, this guru says this, and then people prop themselves up as they're not fully cooked beans at all. Very few out there are. And then they prop themselves up as the new guru, the new swami in town. And then people go, and then they get disillusioned, and they get abused in a lot of instances. And then the whole scene is turned off to them. And they find themselves being in a very lost space. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think, you know, what I got from what you were just saying is that we have to have some purity of heart in the way that we approach these teachings. You know, we can't approach this stuff from our egos and, yo, look at me, check me out, look at how great of a yogi I am, look how long I can meditate for, look, you know, from that place, eventually we're gonna see the karma of that, and you know, it's all gonna come crashing down at some point. So, you know, the importance for me is just to continue to show up in that humility, and in that not knowingness, right? In that Ram Dass always said, becoming nobody, right? Like not, hey, look at me, look how great I am, but no, look at me, I'm just a humble servant, you know, as they talk about in the Krishna Bhakti traditions, humbler than a blade of grass, right? That really resonates with me personally.
Discernment is very, very important, right? Be able to cut through the chaff, so to speak, and
yes,
see what the truth is, and be able to go different places, listen to lectures, read this book and that book, and get out of all that what works for you as an individual for your path. And our paths, all paths are different. We might associate on some levels of kirtan, of course, and of satsang and yoga, but your path is way different than everybody else's. Each individual has their own karmic destiny that they have to play out in the world, and they have to deal with all their karma stuff that comes along with that. Um, I know how stressful it is to even function in today's world. I mean, this COVID situation knocked everything out, but it was good in a certain sense because it brought people, a lot of people back to the inner self. I think they had a lot of time on their hands that they could really dive deeper into their sadhana and deeper into their meditation and the yoga practice, even though they couldn't go and gather. But and reading was very important. I found, and listening to satsangs and listening to music, I found without that and without a foundation, a spiritual foundation, which is very, very important, it would have been very hard for me also to go through the COVID. But I have a strong foundation like you, and that brings us, we can always fall back to that place. Mm.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, there were um, moments, and certainly I didn't want to see anybody getting sick or dying for sure from this, but there were certain moments that I was as happy as I've ever been because there wasn't so much external uh, stuff going on, and I could just do my sadhana. I mean, I remember many days that of staying in this little shala. So we built this home shala right here, so we could do all of our streaming from it, and hours and hours and hours at a time of just being in here and doing my spiritual practices. And I was great for that. I was so grateful for that. We did, as many of y'all know, we were a part of this wonderful Bhaktifest event in Mexico, Baja California, that Yogrishi was a part of. And he kept saying, the pandemic for a yogi was a blessing because it gave you that time to just really go deep and deep and deeper into yourself. So I agree with that. It was a, on some level, a very beautiful time, at least for me personally.
So you're a householder in those kind of terminology, and you're raising a family. You have two fantastic kids and a wonderful wife, but it must be very stressful to maintain your sadhana, your teaching schedule, you're raising your kids, and everybody seems to get burnt out when they have to entertain all that everyday life. But you seem to be doing it in a very important way. Can you talk about that a little bit and maybe help people through that part of life? Because a lot of people say, I don't have time. I got to run to my kids. I don't have time to meditate. I don't have time to do my yoga. I can't even sit down and read a book. I got this, I got that.
Mm. Yeah, I understand. I have a 7-year-old daughter, a 12-year-old son. You know, my son's in algebra now. He needs my help every day after class, at least an hour plus for homework. You know, my daughter's in everything from gymnastics to soccer to dance classes that she needs to be run all over here every day after school. There's not a lot of time, right? There's not a lot of time. But, you know, there's two things that come to mind for myself. You know, the yogi typically wakes up early. So my practice and my guidance to others has always been whatever time you need to wake up to do your householder stuff and material world stuff, make sure you wake up at least an hour earlier so you can take care of yourself.
Right.
So that you feel filled up. And the morning time is precious. You know, reading shlokas and teachings, doing your asanas, meditation, pranayama, chanting your Hanuman Chalisas, whatever your practice is. But the importance of the morning time to reshape ourselves, to reshape our minds, so we're not just external from the moment we wake up, because that's where we get spent. That's where we leak all of our energy. Turn inward first. Remember the light of God that lives within all of us, first and foremost. And that's why we do our practices, ultimately. And then from that place, go out into the world and do what you do and all of your worldly stuff. So the first thing that I'm thinking is that. And the second thing is that every moment is our practice, right? Like, it's something that the Bhagavad Gita teaches about, and the great Dharmic wisdom is that we have to go beyond duality. And duality is fragmentation, is division within us, that this is spiritual, this isn't spiritual, or this is my practice, this isn't my practice. You know, from that place of beyond duality, it all is our practice, right? Every single moment. Ram Dass would say every moment is our curriculum in awakening to who we really are and to awakening into love. So, you know, I try, God, I'm far from perfect at it, but I try to live my life like that, where every moment, wherever I am, whether it's driving in the car or meeting other parents or coaching a soccer game or doing algebra, you know, to live in that equanimity and operate from love rather than operate from ego and judgment and criticism and all that. As I said, I'm so far from being perfect at it, and sometimes so far from being even good at it, because I see myself all the time lashing out at my kids or yelling at my wife or whatever it may be, like so far from the path. But that's a part of it as well too, right?
Exactly.
Because that's how we see ourselves. And we need to see ourselves where we're not to show us the direction where we need to go.
Absolutely. And when that comes up, to be fully present in the moment when that situation develops, like Ramdas says, and then a little boulder is thrown into the road on your path, and how you're going to get around it. Here we are again, the same thing's popping up again. Oh, gee, I thought I was all finished with that already. Mm-hmm. We are never finished with any of this stuff. We're just looking at it at a different time of our lives, so the meaning of it all is different. And you know, your kids will get older, you'll get older, and you'll be looking at the same situations, but then they'll appear differently. But they're always going to be testing us. We're always going to be tested all along the line. And that's the beauty about devotion. That's the beauty of the spiritual path. The gurus and the real gurus never let you have a moment of thinking that you're done. Because if you think that you're done, boom, here's another. Oh, I thought I was done. I have to do this one again. Yeah, and again, and again, and again.
There's a saying, I don't know where I heard this many years ago, not even a 98-year-old yogi is safe, right? Meaning we all still have this ego, we all still have our karma. And as you said, these situations are going to keep coming up. Hopefully we have, you know, learned from our practice, learned from past experience, that when it comes up again, we're a little bit less reactive and we can massage the experience with more love and kindness.
And that's why I like to always review certain books, always continuously having reviews of books, because something I read in my 20s and I'm looking at it in my 30s or 40s or even now, wow, I didn't even see that when I was reading it before. I didn't even understand it. Why? Because we're maturing. We're developing into deeper souls. So the meanings of these things become clearer as we get older, which is so important. It's amazing how we can't be stuck and hold on to anything. Because if you're going to be attached and holding on to anything, it's just going to be taken away from you real quick. Yeah. So what do you think is going on in the spiritual scene today? I notice so many people, you know, yoga became a big business. All, you know, it's a huge business all over, business all over the world, with brand names and people coming out. So many people getting stuck on the path also. They came out as being yogis and they got busted. Numerous people got busted over the years, terribly so, because they weren't able to deal with the ego of, you know, desire, let's say, right? So they start fooling around with their students, or attempting to fool around with your students. And it's really breaks my heart to see some really good yogis turn into something, do that, and then it's done. There's no forgiveness. And I'm thinking, why isn't there any forgiveness? You know, we all have transgressions. We all fall from the light. We all do shitty things. We're sorry for them. Hopefully, we're not going to do them again. But people don't forgive. I think that they don't forgive because they can't forgive themselves. So they can't reach out and forgive anybody else when that happens. What do you think about that?
Well, going back to what you first were talking about, it's an interesting thing. I've been talking to some of my friends lately about the modern day yoga world, the post-COVID yoga world. It's not what it was pre-COVID. There's something different. And I can't put my finger on it, Sri. I really can't figure out what that is, but something feels different now in the yoga world than it did. Yeah, as you had mentioned, big business, big commercialization of yoga. I, to an extent, feel that COVID maybe sifted out a lot of the yoga, because it feels like I know here in Los Angeles, there's a lot less yoga studios now. There's a lot less just teachers that are publicly teaching, where it was every street corner, every block, there was a yoga studio. It's not like that anymore. So I think we're still in this process of seeing what is going to be in this post-COVID world. I think a lot of people still don't feel comfortable going into yoga studios and breathing with other people and chanting with other people, in fear of getting sick, of course. So time will tell with that. And again, I can't place my finger on it, but I do feel like something has shifted and has changed. Going to the other thing that you were just mentioning about certain teachers falling, you know, whether it's stealing or sexual activity with their students or whatever it may be. It's really interesting how it's really hard to forgive people that we've put up on a pedestal, that we've made perfect, right? We've created that within our own minds, that they are beyond human and they are not going to do things like humans do. But I think as long, other than maybe those very rare few great ones, we're all human and we all have our stuff and we all have these desires. And, you know, it's not easy. And Krishna says it many times throughout the Bhagavad Gita: let go of your selfish desires, let go of your selfish desires. But this could be one of the most challenging things in being a human being that we can work on. So, you know, I'm not really sure, brother. I just feel like it's really interesting how you said that it's really important, or it's really hard to forgive. Now, you have been somebody, I mean, I remember a decade ago plus, more than that you always just hammered in the importance of this teaching of forgiveness. And I've learned so much from that teaching from you, and I thank you for that. Because if we can't, and this is from my own experience, if I can't forgive somebody, that poison of anger is still hanging in my own heart and in my own being. And if that poison is still there, it is blocking the free flow of light and love, prana, Shakti, whatever you want to call it. So we must forgive. We must be humble enough to forgive each other. And, you know, I've done so much stupid shit to so many people through the years, myself, that I got to forgive myself as well too. And if maybe the central practice, right? So like, you know, this great teaching, you can't get more light, right? You can't get more love. You have an abundance of it. Okay, then what's the path? Well, the path is then to remove the obstacles that are in the way. Well, exactly what you taught me, that's, I feel like, one of the main hindrances or knots or obstacles when we're hanging on to resentment or anger and our inability to forgive. So thank you, brother, for showing me that, and so many people that.
Forgiveness opens up the path for grace to come in. Forgiveness leads to humility, and humility opens up to the grace. And once you open up to the grace, it settles, and you feel a whole different energy and a whole different vibe, you know? So by forgiving, becoming humble, more humility, that's what it is every day. No matter what comes up, we got to just go back to the humility. You know, be humble. You know, you mentioned before about Shyam Das. He taught us about this becoming the Das of the Das of the Das of the Das, the servant of the servant of the servant of the servant. You know, so when we go to Vrindavan, you know, or wherever, anywhere we go, and to be able to serve whoever comes into our energy, whoever comes into our sphere, whether people coming into our classes or to kirtan or whatever, we're here to serve them. We're not here to have any other dealings other than service, other than serving them, you know?
I love that so much. I
And
love that. And I think that most yoga teachers coming into this path, they graduate from their teacher training, and they're not given that teaching.
no,
And then
absolutely.
it becomes about them.
And then it becomes
Right?
about making money and how many classes am I going to teach and where am I going to go and this and that. And they're missing the whole foundation. And also with these kids, everyone wants to become a yoga teacher. Everyone wants to become a kirtan star. You see that because you give lessons, you give teachings on harmoniums, you give teachings on kirtan. My feeling, and I tell this all the time, when you want to do kirtan and you want to sing to God as a passion of going deeper into your own sadhana. Don't worry about going out into the universe and chanting in front of people, becoming a hero, and oh, look at me, it'll never happen. You're just, first of all, there's no money in this particular genre of music. There's pretty much no money in the music industry anyhow, unless you're a big Lady Gaga or something like that. And, you know, very few people. You see, you look around, and even in our kirtan world, you know, you can only name maybe one or two people that have become really, really famous, you know, Krishnadas or Jai or people like that, you know, and they're still struggling. They're still having to work all the time just to be able to pay the bills. Bills get bigger when you become like they are, so you have to work more, but just do your passion. You know, you want to be a yoga teacher, go teach yoga, but don't expect to make money from it. Do it because you're trying to help people. I think more people should do yoga, teach yoga, and take that to the hospices and the old age homes and teaching these people that are desperately sitting there, dying away with no visitors, with nobody to help them, and nothing to do, to go into one of these places, these old age homes, and start helping them get off their chairs and stretch and do some yoga. They would love it. You know, I've been saying more people should be doing this as teachers. You know, this is very important. I hope maybe somebody can pick this up from this conversation and do that, because it's a great program. We should think about doing it. People did go out and start doing things with the prison projects and going into the prisons and teaching them yoga and meditation and readings And that's been very good around the country. Obviously, we need more. People are being, we have the biggest incarceration rate of any country in the world for minor little pot offenses. People go up to jail for carrying an ounce of marijuana in Alabama, and they have a life prison. Why they're still in there, I have no idea. They should just go sweeping, get rid of them all, legalize cannabis because it's no big deal, as is, anything out there, because everything we do on the external plane needs to be done with moderation. A little of this, a little of that, a little of this, and a little of that. And if you can lead your life on that way, on that path, that's a beautiful way. If you go excessively either way, denying yourself or overdoing it, that's when people break down. That's what happens, and they get psychotic and puts a bad name on everything.
Well, I love, just going back, I believe myself what you said, that the central intention, if you are leading kirtan or teaching yoga, the central intention, first and foremost, is to be of service. And that's it. Period. Boom. Right there. Other things may come from that, but that's just karma doing its thing. The central intention is to be of service, to help people in their path, help people physically. When we do our teacher trainings, this is the first thing, the first primary intention. You are teaching yoga to help others get more comfortable in their body, heal their pains and aches and diseases, and ultimately come to have a relationship with God. When you lead kirtan, it is seva, it is service, it is beautiful service to get other people to sing God's name as well too. And that's what it's about. It's not, yo, check me out, look at how great of a singer I am.
Right. Very important, very important.
And that's why we say sometimes the better musicians, the better the musician, it can actually get in the way of the pure service of kirtan as well too. Not always, of course, but it potentially can, I think, because you start thinking about how good of a musician you are and what you want to show people. Oh, my licks and my voice and all of this kind of stuff. So, our brother Vijay, he always says, maximum participation. This is the most important thing with kirtan. So everybody, maximum participation. So everybody can sing. Well, if you come from that place of service and that's the way you approach it, I feel like that's the environment you create, the space for everybody to open and sing from that place as well.
I had a beautiful conversation with one of our Krishna brothers just yesterday, right? And we were talking about the incarnations. And so he mentioned something, a philosophy, a Vedanta Sutra philosophy, right? So how the Supreme Lord cannot be likened to an ordinary person. And the ordinary person has 4 defects which arise due to contact with the material existent. The defects of a conditioned soul are: he must commit mistakes. He must possess the tendency to cheat others. He must be illusioned. All his senses must be imperfect. So he must commit mistakes, he must be illusioned, he must possess the tendency to cheat others, and all his senses must be imperfect. So then when you see a great being and you meet a great enlightened being, they wouldn't possess any of those 4 areas, you see, so, right? So when you go out looking and people go out looking and they're wanting to be with this person or that one, try to use those 4 principles in your discernment. And if they are still actively involved in any of those, because we are. So you don't want to be with a teacher or a guru that's similar to what you're going through. I'm going to see these spiritual masters to get something from a higher level from them. Not the same stuff that I'm going through. Why do I want to go do that?
Mm.
You know, it's very important.
I've never heard that. That's really wild. I love that.
It's beautiful. So tell me a little bit about what you're doing now and some of the classes. You're leading a group to India. You still have any openings for that?
Yep, we got a few openings, November 2nd through 13th.
Right.
Spend a week in Rishikesh and then 4 days in Vrindavan.
Great.
Right now, we have 2 different kirtan training modules going on, which is module 1 for beginners that are completely new to harmonium, and then module 2.
What is module? What is module? What is that?
Like a module is like a phase 1 or session 1.
Okay.
Is like yeah. So the foundational class is module 1, and then the more developed evolvement of harmonium playing is what we call module 2.
And how long are those modules?
These are 4-week trainings, and we were doing them twice a week, Saturdays and Sundays, but now we're doing just, I felt like everybody's getting so busy now, people aren't wanting to sit around so much at home and be on Zoom. So we're just doing once a week now, which feels really good. It feels good for me. And I think the people that are taking it are feeling really good as well too. That is what's going on now. Every morning, me and a dear friend, we lead these 40-day teachings of the Hanuman Chalisa, right? Today, we're in line 14 of that. And so we spend 40 days and we take one line a day and we go over pronunciation, the meaning of each line, stories about Hanuman, Ram, Sita, Lakshman. And it's 30 minutes. It's like a sadhana that we do every morning.
What time is that?
That's 8 a.m. to 8:30 a.m.
That's West Coast time.
Yeah, West Coast time.
And how do people check that out?
Well, that is something that you need to register for. So you just email us, bhaktiyogashala@gmail.com. And this is, I think, over the pandemic, we just kept doing them over and over and over again. We'd stop one, we'd take a break, we'd finish our 40 days, we'd take a week or 2 off and then start it over again. It's been fabulous just for me, I have to say. I've loved every drop of it. And other than that, we're planning a teacher training coming up in January. We don't have the exact location yet, but that's a yoga teacher training with a bhakti emphasis called Embodied Bhakti, which is bringing the philosophy of bhakti and devotion into the physical practice, and learning how to guide classes from that perspective.
Is that going to be live, or is that going to be also?
That's going to be live. That's going to be live.
For a whole month?
No, it'll probably be somewhere about 15 days.
15 days live with you every single day.
Yes, all day, every day. Exactly. That'll be like a 200-hour training. And so
when you say the hours, what does that mean for people that don't understand?
Well, just the amount of hours that you're spending studying something. So say somebody's doing a 200-hour teacher training. It's 200 hours spent focused on studying yoga and studying to be a yoga teacher with all of the different possible. Every teacher leads it a little differently. Many yoga teachers are connected to this yoga alliance that certifies. I'm not a part of that. I just do mine on my own. But then, so that's what the hours mean. Exactly.
So what do they get when they finish that, for example, 200?
Well, you get, from us, what you get is a certificate of accomplishment, a certificate that you've spent these hours. Now, I told you, I took my first teacher training from Brian Cass, and he's a very wise man. He said, nobody can tell anybody else if they should be a yoga teacher or not. Like, it has to come from within. And if you are not ready to be a yoga teacher, there's probably a good chance that people won't show up to be in your class if you're doing something that's not really in alignment. if you've put your time in, you've studied, you've deepened, you've lived your practice for a long period of time, people will show up. So yeah, just the yoga teacher training is, and now so many people take yoga teacher trainings not to be yoga teachers, but to deepen their understanding of yoga traditionally. Right. And I think that's a wonderful reason to take a yoga teacher training, unless you have a real clear, very clear understanding within yourself that I want to teach yoga to serve people. And I think that's what could be better than that.
I hope more emphasis will be in the future on helping the elderly and helping the elderly that are confined in the hospices. I still have this idea and this desire to establish a spiritual old age home eventually. And, something I've had on my list here for 30 years already. And I find myself now, I have all these friends that are getting into the seniors, and there's no place to go for them.
Like
our
an
society,
elderly ashram to a certain degree. Right?
Our society has not been built on taking care of our parents, even though they put their whole lives into taking care of us. Right? They get old. In India, it's different. Parents raise the kids raise the parents when they get older. Europeans, the same. For some reason, our country, in all its values or lack of values, we don't take care of our parents. It's just, it's so sad. It's so sad that we become a society that is so indulgent and only thinking about ourselves, and even towards our parents. I mean, I never did that with my family. I always was there, lived with them the last couple of months before they died, even though they were on the East Coast there, same place as your folks. But, I always was committed to that, and I think more and more people have to realize, sure, we don't get along with our folks all the time. Sure, they nag us. Now we nag them. Eat better, exercise more, all that kind of stuff. I'm sure you're going through that. But yes, that's super important, because you turn around and it's over. All my years I spent with Ram Dass, there's not a single day that goes by where I don't reminisce about our days, how we spent together, and the closeness of all my spiritual teachers and masters. And I'm so thankful and blessed, and as we all are, and every day we need to say, thank you for giving me another day to serve, to be here for people and take care of people, And we keep thinking, we say the word Shamdas all the time. Only a few of us had the blessings of being with this great wise man, and he was taken out of our life very early for him and very early for our relationships with him, right? And we question that all the time, because at any moment it's done, it's finished, right? So at the end of the day, it's not how much money we have or how many kids we have or how many cars or houses. It's how much good have you done to your fellow man or woman, right? How did you take care of everybody? I recall that, when was it that we were down in Baja? Last June?
Yep, just a few months ago, down in June.
We had the best time at the Bhakti Fest Lunar Soul Retreat. It was like remarkable, right?
It truly was, everybody. It truly was. Please come join us, or come back with Sri and Michael Brian Baker, Shiva Ray. I can't even believe the lineup you have for this one coming up in November.
Yeah, it's going to be
Shiva Ray, kirtaneers, Michael Brian Baker, and a few others. That this is going to be a festival right on the beach.
But don't forget about your coming back in June. We're still on for that. Make sure you tell everybody it's still going to be on. The dates are set. We're going to put it out there after November. We're going to start talking about it. It's going to be a great week in Baja. Govindas and Radha. Yoga Rishi is coming back. We're going to have a great time down there. And in fact, I'm going to invite Michael Brian Baker back also, because he's such a special man, certain people are doing certain special things, and I do really want to associate more with those kind of people, right? Anything in closing? I'll give everybody your website and where they can reach you, and how to find out more about what you're doing.
Yeah, pretty much everything we do is run through Instagram. So we have our Yogashala, Bhakti Yogashala on Instagram. But I also have my own personal Instagram, which is govind.das.108. And so really between those two places and our website, Bhakti Yogashala, that's where you can check in with everything that we're doing. And we have this portal, this online portal that's like $27 a month. And there's, hundreds and hundreds of Dharma talks, yoga classes, meditations, kirtans, that you can, practice on your computer at home, virtually at any time, any place. And it's really, I feel very good about it. And it's for someone that's seeking this kind of bhakti and practices, it's really a cool thing.
I encourage our listeners to tap into that source and that resource that you're providing. Very valuable. I always considered you on a different level of teaching than most people, most teachers, because of your purity. I'm always attracted to the purity of the teacher, right? Not all the other stuff that we're all going through, but the way you deliver your teachings, your yoga teachings. And I love when you came around to me doing the class down there in Baja, and I was doing what I think the down dog or one of the child's pose or one of the, and you started leaning on my back, and my knees were so painful. I was saying, "What the fuck? Please get off my back! You're killing me." I was saying that inside myself, but I breathed, and I let it go, and it became easier. So don't let anything that looks like it's difficult hold you back from pushing forward, because it does get easy.
Yes. Well, I want to say in closing, I just want to thank you, brother. You've been instrumental for the global spiritual community, but specifically the Western spiritual community, looking way back to Woodstock, that you brought Swami Satchidananda to open the whole festival, to bringing Amma, who's transformed so many lives. You brought Amma to America. And then, of course, with Bhaktifest and so many other things. But you have been one of these great leaders for all of us to follow. And I thank you so much for your dedication to your path and your dedication to serving others through creating environments through which we can come to the path and we can meet the teachings and we can receive the great wisdom of the great ones. So you've been an instrumental brother and friend and guide and teacher for me. And I just love you so much. And I offer flowers at your feet, my friend. So thank you.
Same with me to you.
Love you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Govindas. Thank you for joining us today for another Bhakti Speaks. Let's do this again sometime in the future, Govindas. It was a pleasure to have you on. Thank you all for joining us, and have a beautiful day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.